All right. Welcome to another episode of Agency Intelligence Podcast, where I give you a real agent inside a real agency, giving you the real agency intelligence and not the artificial that they try to make you believe out there. So this is Cass, and I'm here with a nice special guest. You know what, Kelsie, when we were in the green room, I didn't even ask you how to say your last name, and I saw it where you filled it out phonetically. But why? So I don't butcher it. Why don't you introduce yourself? First time ever, the guest is going to introduce themselves. Take it away, Kelsie.
Well, hello. I am Kelsie Hoehne. I manage quality assurance and agency training at TRICOR Insurance.
Yes, TRICOR Insurance. Yes. I remember this now. It was funny, right before we got on, loyal listeners, I said to her, I was like, so what was the reason what we were talking about that made me say, hey, let's do this? And then she reminded me. And now I even remember it was TRICOR, okay, when we were talking about this, because I know some other people who work or used to work there. So you are now, what did you say you do? You're director of training?
Yeah, so I manage quality assurance and training.
And it was a data conversation that I overheard you having. Do you remember that conversation, Kelsie?
Yeah, I remember it well. I was chatting with our data analyst here at TRICOR just about, the good old good data in, good data out conversation and the importance of auditing as a piece of our training program. Gotcha.
Yeah, boy, we are some straight geeks, aren't we, Kelsie?
Straight up. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about you. So, I mean, take me back to high school, diapers, whatever, bring me forward. How'd you get to where you are now?
Yeah, so I come from retail, like a lot of us in the industry do, I think. Mm-hmm. I worked in a training role for Bed Bath & Beyond for years and years, and was one of the sick, twisted individuals who loved that retail life. But
what'd you love about it?
Yeah, loved the people and the challenge, merchandising. Almost all of it.
Okay. Yeah. Just the challenge and dealing with people.
Yeah. And the selling,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then what happened? Where'd you go from there?
Yeah. So then my husband and I got married, and I was like, I cannot live this crazy retail life if we're going to have a family. So truthfully, just started thinking about like, what could I sell or train on from 9 to 5?
Right.
And stumbled into insurance, was first in a sales role with American Family, and then found my way to TRICOR.
Okay, so you were in that you were actually the agent for an American Family agency, or were you working just in the agency?
Yeah, I was just working in the agency as a producer. Mm-hmm. And then
you found TRICOR, which is a very ginormous agency. How many people? Yeah. How many employees is TRICOR?
Yeah, so we are growing all the time. Currently at 31 locations and 300-ish employees.
That's what I thought. Yeah. I thought it was 250 plus. So yeah. That's impressive. That's impressive. You guys are the heads are doing something right there, obviously.
For sure.
And what gets you passionate about data? What do you see? How do you, when you're dealing with training, let's rehash some of the conversation that you were having before.
Yeah. I think what really gets me going in terms of data is being able to see whether or not your training is effective. I think that's a challenge we have as an industry. Mm-hmm. Historically, it's been really like sink or swim, one size fits all on a training True. Approach. And it's difficult to gauge outside of, errors that you happen upon what, if your training has been effective, and then also training strategies are formed by what the data tells us. So it's really critical informing those strategies.
So how are you collecting that data to create these strategies? To explain that more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're on Applied Epic, and so we use the reporting functionality that's available through Epic. So we look at, it's not a science. We do have to, fill in the the pieces, so to speak, on creating that whole picture in terms of if somebody needs additional training or the training wasn't effective. But a lot of the activity reporting allows us to drill down on if the workflows are being followed, if there's, an understanding on process, is it coverage, that's the piece missing. So we lean into those reports.
And do you guys have like some kind of learning management system, something that like you guys use to actually, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I think that they're called LMSs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a couple learning management systems that we use. So we are bringing on Total CSR in the next couple months here, which we're really jazzed about integrating into our program. And then we also have another learning management system that we use to lay out training paths, house content, that kind of thing as well.
This is an internal one?
It is, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was curious about that. I think LMSs are going to become more important. They're kind of that missing piece in the lack of training that we have as an industry. You know what I mean? That kind of what you're talking about. And I think it's right now it's something that larger agencies think about, that it's going to filter down to where smaller agencies have to think about this as well in order to compete.
Yeah. And you know what I think is really critical about having that LMS, besides being able to create and deliver consistent content, is that it really allows for transparency on the side of the new hire as well as the manager or supervisor. They can really see, what they're working through, what they've completed, and it allows them to sort of see a tangible trajectory as to where they're headed in their training.
Do you guys use virtual employees?
We don't yet. It has definitely been a conversation, but haven't pulled the trigger on anything in particular yet.
Yeah. Why don't you think so? I'm curious. Some large agencies of your size don't use them. Some of them couldn't work without them. What do you think's the difference there? Yeah,
that's a great question. Obviously, we're at AppliedNet a couple of weeks ago and heard, anecdotes across that entire spectrum, right, on size of agency and whether or not they're utilizing those virtual employees. I think one of the reasons we haven't gone there yet is we've been able to maintain with internal hires and have been able to maintain just barely in terms of managing. So it's a conversation as we grow. Is that something that we're going to have to lean into out of necessity? Whereas in this moment, we're kind of teetering, I guess I would say.
You just bring up a good point. Maybe agencies, one not right, wrong or right, that have an internal growth like you advocate for TRICOR to have. It doesn't necessarily need it because those basic data jobs are sometimes the best training jobs, right? That then you move up. But if you're a agency, maybe that's not your focus, is that internal growth, which is okay too. Maybe it comes from, hey, we would hire somebody outside, to bring them in and fill in those data jobs rather than using them as stepping stones. I could see both theories being there and both of them being right. Make sense, Kelsie?
Absolutely. I would say that's spot on in terms of what we've been using those roles in that space for at this time. I mean, that's just so invaluable to kind of see the nuts and bolts.
It is.
Prior to getting in that account manager or producer role. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. One of my first jobs, I was paid $8 an hour, and I was asked to answer the phone. And I remember when I sat down right in the front desk, right behind the desk. This is 2001, and I sat down, and they said, and the phone rings, and it just keeps ringing, and the wife of the husband gets it, and the next time the phone rings, the wife gets it, and the husband comes out and says something to the effect of, if you would like to keep your job, you need to answer the phone. And I thought to myself, and I said to them, I don't know what to say,
right.
But as you're talking about it, I figured it out quickly, and I know that is not an official training thing, but it shows that there's you just got to get in there sometimes and figure it out. And that's the way that it kind of used to be, you know, and some of those were the best jobs to have. And digital has eliminated a lot of those handwritten things that we used to have to do.
Yeah, you bring up such a great point, right? That like learning on the job, right? Historically in this industry, the training program has been sit next to the successful producer until you are also successful, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so I think we're, as an industry, in this place of like really a reactive space, right? We have the great resignation that we're all dealing with, and people reaching retirement age. And we have this real vacuum, right? Where we're getting in this influx of new to industry hires and don't know what to do with them, right? Because they're not accepting of, and rightfully so, that sit here until you're successful mantra. So as an industry, really having to pivot and learning that one size fits all training program doesn't fit all. Right.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I have two 23-year-olds and one 24-year-old. The 24-year-old does our personal lines and then two commercial lines on the 23-year-olds. And what I do notice about them is they want to be told like the path. They want to know what it is. Now, give them room because they want to do their own thing, but they want to know where the guardrails are and where are we going, you know? And I think, loyal listeners, it's important that you hear what Kelsie's saying, and what I'm trying to say here is that they really do. And you got to think about it. These are my kid. One of them's my kid, right? It's the way that I raised them. It was like everything was set up for them, whether we tried to, you know, let them fall on their face or not, we as parents, you know. And so they're kind of accustomed to that. It's kind of like, hey, you're going to play basketball or you're going to play a sport, but it's up to you to choose which sport you want to play, you know, what position you want to play. You know, that's up to you, but we're going that way. And they expect that now in the work area. What do you think, Kelsie?
I think that's 1,000% accurate. And, you know, one of the other things that we see, and I want to back up for just a second. Like, I understand that completely, the wanting to understand, like, where am I headed? What is my trajectory? And I think it's so critical because they're trying to picture, is this my career or is this right now, right? And if we can't give them that roadmap, then what we're saying is, you know, your career trajectory is not clear. And that's, you know, stressful. So
you're right.
I think, we have to lean into that because you're right. Like, if you give them the guardrails and the trajectory, they're like ready to rip and want to provide that immediate value. So again, how do we do that? How do we allow them to be immediately valuable while understanding that this is an industry where you're learning like forever, right? You never know
really
everything.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think nursing can say that. Doctors can say that. But they can say, yeah, but it's a very small, minute thing. I mean, you may see, a heart surgery is a heart surgery, right? Now, I'm not a heart surgeon here, loyal listeners, so please forgive me. But I imagine it's pretty routine, and then there's some weird situations that occur. That's my guess. In insurance, there's no one time that the process or the client reacts the exact same way. You know, I mean, it just doesn't. Everything is, and we try to create our own internal programs, right? Our own internal processes, but sometimes we have to bend those a lot. And that's actually sometimes where the best employees come from, when they know it's okay, as when we need to go outside the process to make sure that the client gets the value and the expectation they are expecting, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's also the best training ground, right? Like the things that I remember most distinctly when I was new to the industry are the times that I royally screwed something up, right? Because it was an out-of-the-box situation. So leveraging that and highlighting it as a learning opportunity instead of a pitfall, I think, is another place where we can have the opportunity to build culture, but also give that psychological safety to those new to industry hires.
Yeah, it's the Jeff Bezos thing of I think it's called failing forward or something like that. They have he encouraged that, right? And it was how the 2-day shipping was brought into place. Was these people were trying to try something and they knew they couldn't figure it out. but they tried. But if you read, I can't remember exactly what book I was reading, but they tell the story, and they actually got it down to like 3 or 4 hours. Like they could get 3 to 4 days. They could guarantee it, right? And you got to keep in mind, this is in 2006, 2005, which that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And, but because they brought that forward, and Bezos and his team encouraged them to talk about the things that they failed on. And one of those things got brought up. Well, then when it got brought up in front of the whole team, it was like, oh, well, all you have to do is this and this, and now we could get it to 2 hours. Well, it was the fact that they actually failed that brought that forward. If they would have been like everybody else and said, no, that's a failure, let's not look at that or recognize it. So there's a lot that can be learned in that failure. So I like what you mentioned, and that falls right in line with, I think Bezos is kind of right about a couple things.
I think at least a few. Yeah.
A couple few. So, yeah. So anyways, anything else you want to share, or, something that you wanted to talk about that I just wanted to expose? The purpose of me having you on here was you had a dynamic conversation. I knew we would go along this line, but I just always like to expose the people out there that have the passion and the drive and the love and I haven't asked you, I don't think, but you're very young, and that's awesome. And it's like I just appreciated that. And that's when we started this podcast, it was about giving a voice to those who have no voice. And it's not that you don't have a voice, you do in your organization, but we want to make sure that the great things you're doing there, do other organizations know about it, right?
Thanks.
You're going to have people that are going to reach out to you to say, hey, help me do this or that. And then, man, we're just pushing this great industry forward. Yeah.
Just cooking with gas. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here for sure. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we're really working at, and I think is pertinent to lots of others in the industry right now, is emphasizing our culture of learning, right? And maintaining culture as we grow at the rate that we're growing. Culture is your brand, right? Mm-hmm. It's your brand both internally and externally. And so we're really working on building a training program that supports that culture, and then also working on a lot of M&A activity. So looking at how do we bring on agencies that have a similar culture? Because that is something that's, you can train on it to an extent, but is either there or isn't, right? So just culture as a push right now, for sure.
It's either there, it's not. Walmart says we don't hire, or what is it? We don't train our people to be nice. We just hire nice people. Yeah. Right. And that's the thing. Now, if you want that to be the culture, hire those specific people. It cuts down in your bucket, right, of who you can go after, but it only sweetens the pot of the culture that you're moving all this to. So. Yeah. Culture is huge. And it used to be, when we talk about this, like people's eyes would start to roll back in their head and get like glossy and shit, but now it's something that I think people realize, like, you can't expect your employee to be social at home, to have social friends, to be on social media communicating, to be at events like Applied or wherever socializing, and then come to the office and the people that they're around for 8 hours to 9 hours to 10 hours a day, they're not supposed to be social and have some kind of cultural connection to how we run and we operate. That wouldn't make any sense, right?
Yeah,
and so
totally.
we have a culture in our homes, right, with our kids and everything. It's our culture. That's who we are,
I 100% agree. And I think when you talk about, the great resignation and just this influx of new hires that the industry is experiencing, if you have that solid culture, right, it's a lot harder for that person to leave for just more money, right? Because anybody can throw more money at them. The culture is what keeps people, right? And it is, I think, our greatest tool in the toolbox in terms of retention is building connection and a culture that they don't want to quit.
God, I hope people are listening to you right now and really paying attention. I'm serious. My dudes, I call them the dudes. That's these three guys. I call them the dudes. And they're not going anywhere. And I got so mad. Took them to a conference. I won't mention the company. It was a company meeting, and like my guys are coming back, and dudes are like, "Yeah, this guy just offered to hire me, and this guy offered to hire me," and we get back, and a couple people have called him and stuff, and it's like, man, I mean, at least do me the honor of, don't attack them the first time you ever meet them, because they've only been doing this like a year and a half. But they're killing it, and they're doing good jobs, right? Mm-hmm. They're not leaving me to go somewhere else. They're just not. Yeah. The culture and the funness that we have putting greens and in our office and bags that we throw across the thing. We're trying to find a new place to go to. Yeah. And we are having a hard time because we need something that has big enough ceilings that we can bring our golf simulator into. I'm serious. That is a requirement of our office.
Necessary.
And dude, we pump out more insurance and more phone calls than anybody else does, but we have a good damn time doing it as well,
Yeah, work hard, play hard, right? That's huge. I think it's a lot harder if you've developed that relationship and you've developed that connection. It's a lot harder for a new hire to have to look me in the face when they know me and quit. There's true. That whole quiet quitting thing, that
quiet quitting.
You see circulating all over social media.
I had never heard that actually.
Oh yeah, that's a big topic of conversation. Basically, the idea that people are just like doing bare minimum work, and not seeking additional challenge. But again, that's a non-issue if you've built a connection with your staff where they are hungry, right? And know they can come to you for more.
Kelsie, you need to write a blog that we put out on Agency Intelligence's blog that's called the quiet quitting. I'm serious.
I'll work
that's
on
cool.
it. Yeah.
I hear a lot of people talk about that, and I think that's I don't think that I hear a lot of people talk, and I've never really heard that before, and that sounds great. And you talk about the Great Resignation. Yeah. I've also heard it's the Great Retirement. I also heard it's the Great Reshuffle.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
Reshuffle. Mm-hmm. There was another one. There was 4 of them that I heard. The Great. It was another R, but the point was there was these 4 R's that were going around, and it was true because they're all true, right? Some of it just COVID just forced people into retirement, right?
Right.
I was talking to a lady, and this kind of made me change my own gears. Getting off here on a second, but the lady said to me, she said, Jason, I'm one of those people that used to work in the restaurant cooking the hamburger, and I don't do it anymore. And I said, oh, really? And she said, yeah, because now when I was getting $16, $17 an hour sweating in the kitchen, she says, now I drive in my car and I deliver that same burger through Uber, and I'm making around $23 to $26 an hour, and I get to make my own hours, and I get to sit in the car and listen to my own music, and I'm my own boss. Why would I go do that? And it made me realize it's like, wow, these people aren't just like not wanting to work. They really literally reshuffled, right? They literally was like, well, I'm not doing that anymore. I can do this, right? And so crazy to think about that. And then it makes you wonder, where do these people come from? Where do we get these people so that we actually can use all the tables in the restaurant, right? How many times do we go to the restaurants now and you're like, what do you mean there's a waiting list? Like half the restaurant's empty,
Yeah. And so much empathy for the people who are still there, right? Sister. Yeah.
Empathy. And that's another thing that has to be, it's training ground, right? Empathy, emotional intelligence, becoming something that really actually drives culture. When you have people who have emotional intelligence, the culture is a lot easier to create. What do you think about that as we wrap up? Empathy. Is that something that you guys train towards? Is that something you guys teach or hire for?
Yeah. When I train on the claims process specifically, I walk through a little acronym that's LEAD, and we talk about listening, empathizing, apologizing, and delivering a a for the client.
Come on, girl.
Right? Preach it.
Yeah. Let me pull up a chair so you can get up there and preach on that mountain. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think empathy is a cornerstone, not only in like our claims process and just our day-to-day interactions with clients, It's a critical piece when we're talking about maintaining the humanity of the workplace, right? Mm-hmm. Empathy with each other, empathy for the client. Goes a really long way in building connections, which is what, it's all about, right?
That's right. It's all about the connections, Hey, Kelsie, I really appreciate your time. What a fantastic conversation. I think the loyal listeners got a lot out of this. Exactly what I thought it would heard when I was overhearing the conversation that you were just ranting and raving about. I said, I love someone who can rant and rave. See if she can rant and rave more than me. Why don't you come on my podcast? So, hey, Kelsie, thank you very much. TRICOR is lucky to have you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
And loyal listeners, you know what I do because I do it for you. Tell me your thoughts, tell me your ideas, and I'm going to tell the world what you have to say. This is Cass. She is Kelsie, and we are out.